Hello, welcome back. I am Russell, and this is React Foundations. This video is chapter number 5, Building UI with Components. If you have not done so already, make sure you go back and do chapter 1 through 4 so that you're caught up with us, but let's get right into it. So, chapter 5 is all about building UI with components, and we need to understand a bit about React core concepts. So, there are 3 core concepts of React that you'll need to be familiar with to start building React applications. These are components, props, and state. In the next chapters, we will go through these concepts and provide resources where you can continue learning them. After you're familiar with these concepts, we'll then show you how to install Next.js and use newer React features such as server and client components. Okay, so what are components? Components are user interfaces that can be broken down into smaller building blocks called components. Components allow you to build self-contained, reusable snippets of code. If you think about components as Lego bricks, you can take these individual bricks and combine them together to form larger structures. And if you need to update a piece of UI, you can update the specific component or brick. So if we think about, like, I'm just going to use a maybe e-commerce site as an example in your head. Maybe think about, I don't know, like Best Buy or something like that. You have a web page in front of you, and then maybe there's a nav bar, right? And then there's different products on the page. And we can start breaking the page down into different components, right? So here they're showing an example of a media component, right? That's broken down. So this is a piece of content on the page, and maybe there's multiple media components, right? Or think about maybe like Spotify or something like that, or a blog post, right? So you have an image, some text, and a button, right? And there could be multiple of these. Like every blog post has an image, some text, and a button, right? And so here's the component, and then we can break that down into smaller pieces. So this modularity allows your code to be more maintainable as it grows because you can add, update, and delete components without touching the rest of your application. The nice thing about React components is that they are just JavaScript. Let's see how you can write a React component from a JavaScript perspective. So, creating components. In React, components are functions. Inside your script tag, create a new function called header. Okay, so inside our script tag, and they're doing this below app and above our root, we're going to create a function, and we're going to call it header, and we have a function body. Okay, a component is a function that returns UI elements. Inside the return statement of the function, you can write JSX. So we have this function, and we return from that an element that is really just JSX. So we can have our H1 and develop, preview, and ship, and close our H1. There we go. So we have our function header, and it's returning our H1. To render this component to the DOM, pass it as the first argument in the root render method. So basically, we're going to delete what we had here before, which is that piece that we just created in the header. And instead of that, we're just going to pass in the function header. But wait a second. If you try to run the code above in your browser, you'll get an error. To get this to work, there are 2 things we have to do. First, React components should be capitalized to distinguish them from plain HTML and JavaScript. So the first thing that we have to do is change this to a capital, and also here. Second, you use React components the same way you'd use regular HTML tags with angle brackets. So instead of writing header, we're actually going to make what looks like an HTML element and a self-closing one, right? So we created this function, which is a component, and now we can use that anywhere we want in our application just by writing this sort of like how we would write an HTML tag. It's almost like we created our own special HTML tag. But remember, this is JSX. If you try to run this code in your browser again, you'll see your changes. So now if I reload, it should look exactly the same. And just to show you that this didn't work before, I'll go back and change this so you can see. No bueno, it does not work. Right? And I can reload the page. Doesn't want to work because we're not using this correctly. So we need to make sure that we create that tag and make sure it's capitalized as well. Okay, so next we are going on to nesting components. Applications usually include more content than a single component, right? There's more than just, we're gonna have more than just this, right? One H1 on the page. And we can create multiple components. So you can nest React components inside each other like you would regular HTML elements. In your example, create a new component called homepage. So we're going to use the same, basically the same setup that we did before. So we're creating a function called homepage, and from that, we're going to return a div. Okay. Then nest the header component inside the new homepage component. So here, now let me put some parentheses around this. And here we're going to put our header. There we go. And this is just a comment saying nesting the header component. I'm not going to add that. Now, we can look at this. So I just want to check. Yeah, so nothing should have changed at this point. Now, if you notice, we put our header in here and we have our homepage, but we're not actually rendering that yet. So component trees, you can keep nesting React components this way to form component trees. So if you think about like our homepage, like this function, we might have a header, an article, a footer, and then inside the header, we could have logo, title, nav bar. Nav bar might have links, right? So for example, your top level homepage component could hold a header, an article, and a footer component. And each of those components could in turn have their own child components and so on. For example, the header component could contain a logo, title, and navigation component. This modular format allows you to reuse components in different places inside your app. In your project, since homepage is now your top level component, you can pass it to the root.render method, right? So instead of header, we can do homepage. And notice our homepage is also taking in this header, right? We have that on here. So if we reload, we should see we should see now it all looks the same again, right? So we have our home page, which has our header inside of it, and we're just rendering the home page. Okay. Additional resources. So your first component and importing and exporting components. It is quiz time again. Test your knowledge and see what you have learned. How would you nest a nav component inside a layout component in React? So we have a layout component and we want to nest the nav component inside of it. Well, what do you guys think? Layout and nav, or layout and nav. I'm going to guess B. Correct. In React, you can nest components inside each other, forming a component tree. Pretty cool. So with that, congratulations. You've completed chapter 5, and we're really going through this. So you've created your first React components. In the next video, we're going to walk through displaying data with props. Learn what props are and how you can use them to display data. And with that, I will see you in the next video.